Yo, what's good, y'all? You Dub back here again here in 2019. And I want to have a discussion with y'all and I hope this is one of the videos that really blows up and really gets out there. Some videos I just be having fun or whatever. But this is really something I've noticed in the last decade, really the last 5 to 7 years. Okay. There is this Western obsession with the notion of heroes and villains. Okay. You could say, well, yeah, isn't there always heroes and villains? No. In fact, there are rarely heroes and villains, especially villains. There are rarely villains. But there's this mentality that there always has to be the hero and there always has to be the villain. You're like, Wonder, you're exaggerating. Not in the least. In every single field and industry, I noticed this perception. There's let me begin with the Scarface line. All right. Do you remember if you watched Scarface, the legendary classic movie Scarface? If you never watched it, I recommend pretty much everybody watches it. Yes, there's a lot of cussing and there's a lot of whatever, but there are so many life principles. So say good night to the bad guy. Don't never be another like me again. You need a guy like me. So you can point your fucking fingers and say, see that? That's the bad guy. What does that make you? Good? Tony Montana, Al Pacino's Scarface, he's talking about a beautiful thing. Now, the first time you see it, it seems out of place, right? But if you sit back and analyze that scene, that is that movie had so many phenomenal scenes. But that scene alone is one of the best scenes ever captured in cinema film history. Ever. Because he's talking in a room full of people, you know, it's not nothing against the wealthy. It's people small people, they live in the prim, the proper. But behind the scenes, how many of them are involved in the dirt, are involved in the exact same industry he's a part of, or get connects through guys like him. If you don't know, Scarface deals with cocaine. He became a cocaine distributor, to say the least. Okay, there's a lot more to it. One of the all-time gangster films. Love the gangster genre. But the point is, now he was a villain, no doubt. But the beautiful thing I love about that movie is because there was no hero. There was no hero. A lot of people believe that the protagonist has to be a hero. One of the all-time great stories, okay? Antigone, the Greek tragedy, the Greek drama that was Antigone. You know who the heroine was? It was Antigone. You know what she was? She was an antagonist. She was not the protagonist. People think that the protagonist has to be a hero. Someone like, if you're talking about One Piece, Straw Hat Monkey D. Luffy, he's not a hero. Son Goku, he's a hero, but he has selfish tendencies as well. People like it shocks them. A hero should be like this paradigm, this paragon, this exhibit of pure righteousness. In fact, in comics with Superboy Prime, one of the reasons he wilded out against the Justice League later on and became a villain in his own right is because he sees the seeming heroes that are the Justice League and other members of the DC universe, taking us back a few years in the comics. He sees them and he's like, they're not my idealized heroes. There's this tendency to make men and women gods and goddesses, put them on pedestals. You see this all the time with athletes. You'll see, people like LeBron James, a good man, be made into a villain. You'll see the Golden State Warriors, because of their dynasty, become villainous. The Patriots, different ones, become villains. Because of what? Different reasons, which I'll get back to later on in this video. But the thing is, this obsession with this hero and villain, making some people to seem the good. Floyd Money Mayweather Jr. plays the villain role. He's the evil one. Donald Trump, when he was running for president, I kept saying he played the villain role. He played the villain. It's the villain. The villain. There's always got to be this boogeyman. This obsession with this villainous. The big corporations, they're the villains. They're the villains. They're so bad and evil and they do good. And I'm going to save you and provide the good and be the savior to the people. A messiah figure. You hear that with people, you know, you heard that with certain Democrats that say this. Now I'm not throwing shade, but this is the kind of rhetoric you hear on the comment. You look even with like things like pro wrestling with the WWE. You hear people say there has to be a face and there has to be a heel, a baby face. A uh, good character versus the heel, the bad, the nasty. There can be heel versus heels. There's been plenty. One of the all-time classic matchups is when Chris Jericho faced Edge, a heel versus heel for a World Heavyweight Championship match. It was a great matchup. Sometimes villain versus villain. Sometimes a hero versus a hero needs to face off against one another. But then it gets interesting because this whole seemingly hero dynamic, oh, just heroes are boring. We want sympathetic villains. We want sympathetic antagonists. We want to feel where you come from. We don't want a carbon copy, cookie cutter, just generic. Oh, he's just bad, just trying to take over the world. We need something to latch onto. And we also want our heroes to have our flaws, but at the same time, we still want them to be, overly triumph. Part of the problem with the whole thing with the Last Jedi and people, I constantly hear this against Luke Skywalker, not understanding his character, not understanding that was in his character. Plus, there was decades. Is you have these people, that wasn't my Luke. My Luke was this hero. He was this someone to look up to and inspire. They have to put these people on a pedestals, not understanding that these are humans. These are fallible creatures. So we want to project certain aspects or overblow things we don't like. Someone, if anything, it starts to showcase the insecurities, inferiority complexes of the individuals who do these projections. That person's wealthy. That person couldn't have got it by legitimate means. Oh, that person thinks he's better than me. That person's living well. Well, that person's envious. You see, that person's intellectual. He thinks he know it all. Oh, he condescending, he arrogant, he think he better than everyone because that person is educated, because that person is intelligent and speaks and portrays himself or herself that kind of regard. That person is greater athletic. Man, he just is only able to do that because he has such and such ability. If I had that ability, I could do that. You hear these kind of things, and this envy, this negative jealousy that portrays, and then it becomes the hatred, bitterness, and potentially murder. Okay, I use the biblical example of the lesson of King Saul versus David, and you don't have to believe in that faith, but it's still a great story of here's a man who was selected. He was king. He had the power, the wealth, the fame. But David started getting that more fame. King Saul like I'm the king, but David was the rising star. And King Saul felt threatened. King Saul was like, he got jealous, became envious. Instead of trying to be more like David, a good man, no. Try to eliminate and eventually became hatred towards murder. He tried to kill him, and then David had to flee, and then Saul wanted him dead. Understand that Saul's own son, Jonathan, was the best friend, and he wanted his own son dead. Anakin Skywalker, great example from Star Wars. When you let these bitterness, these things manifest, and the ugliness, and it boils over like a black goop out of a swamp, and it becomes a nasty creature. Anakin Skywalker in Revenge of the Sith is a beautiful example of this. Episode 3. I watched this hero and villain thing. People always have to seeming this tendency or always have to make things when in some cases people are just people, and sometimes they're just battles of ideology. Neither one is necessarily right and neither one is necessarily wrong. Maybe the actions are right or wrong, but that doesn't mean that that person's ideology was wrong. I've seen that a number of times in fiction where that person, for example, Naruto. Always say that Naruto never had a villain. It had a bunch of antagonists. Orochimaru was not a villain. He became an anti-villain at the near the end of the series, but he was never a villain. May have done villainous deeds. He was never a villain. Um, Pain, aka Nagato, was not a villain, and he stomped Uzumaki Naruto. Because remember, Pain's like, oh, so you know, you want to get back if I destroy your village. But what about mine? Mine was destroyed. You know, my what justice do I get for my people? Naruto had no answer because there is no answer for that. There is no answer. You're just perpetuating a cycle. You're angry and stuff, but how can you tell me I'm not justified in getting justice for my people who were destroyed by your people? You see? You might not agree with his methods, and the same thing Uchiha Madara. You might not agree with his methods, but Madara wasn't wrong. Obito, you don't have to agree with his methods, you don't have to agree with his ideology, but he was not a villain. They may have not done all the right things, but they weren't a villain. In One Piece, Sir Crocodile, he's not a villain. And Enel wasn't a villain either. They did things that may have been villainous, but they weren't villains. Okay? And so this whole thing that there always has to be a right and always has to be a wrong is completely inaccurate. There's no real foundation for it, especially when you come out in our regular world. Very few villains. If you want to say Hitler was a villain, okay. Joseph Stalin, okay. Now we're talking about actual villains, people who are doing diabolical, maniacal things. Pol Pot, you know what I'm saying? But some of these people, y'all want to paint to be villains in the media and the entertainment industry. I understand it gets sales. I understand the business aspect about it. But the thing is, these people aren't bad people. Yeah, they have flaws like we all do. What are you now superior? And that's the thing on the end. This painting out to be that this person is superior and to this person. We're all equal. We all have problems. Why is there a Western obsession? And why did it become this way? Have nothing wrong with heroes and villains. Love it. Love fiction. But the thing is, there are lessons to be taught more than anything. There are when we look at characters, this is about justice, about honor, duty, integrity, things of that nature, fighting for the common man. Those are the lessons. And the villain, doing despicable deeds, harming people, being ugly. But what happens when you have a situation where that person is doing something because that person's been led to do something? The person's life has led that person to do something. What happens if that person does interactions that are deemed villainous by society because that person's actions don't fit into what the society deems acceptable? For example, I'll use a character from Bakido, Musashi Miyamoto in the current Baki series. He's not a villain. He's just acting, for the most part, how he acted in his era. He's time displaced. It's a whole thing with Bakido. Go read it if you want to find out. But the thing is, he's not a villain. Baki doesn't have any villains either. At one point, you could say Yujiro was villainous, but he's really an antagonist. Baki's another series that doesn't have villains. Um, it's just people who do things for different reasons. They are very multi-layered characters. So, in conclusion to this video, there has been this clear fixation on people putting people as good and bad, and it's just not right based on perception. And that's what it comes down to. People's perception become reality. They say that, but that's not true. Perception is not reality. That's like saying a hallucination or a mirage is a reality. No, you have delusional people. That's like saying schizophrenics' voices in their head makes that real. No, no, that's not reality. Reality's objective based, not your personal take on a matter. Unexpected one to like, comment, subscribe. Tell me your thoughts on this subject. And if you want to hear any more subjects like these, please let me know. I would very much appreciate it. I love talking about these kind of, more, tertiary, more existential existential, excuse me, conversations. All right, y'all have a beautiful day, beautiful night. Peace.